Welcome to another edition of the Sim Racing Garage. I'm Barry Rowland, and in this episode, we'll be reviewing the SimuCube Ioni-based OSW wheel kit from the guys at Augury Simulation. Located in Almeria, Spain, Augury Simulation is offering some great-looking sim racing hardware, from their OSW direct drive force feedback systems offered in an 18, 20, and 30 Nm variations to the very cool-looking custom F1-based steering wheels and an upcoming professional pedal set. You can tell they are serious about what they do. The kit we are reviewing includes an 18 Nm peak torque midge motor, almost the peak power of the 20 Nm or small midge motor, but in a smaller and less expensive package. I'm looking forward to seeing how this motor performs in the Sim Racing Garage's review process. So let's get to it. Now let's take a closer look at what we get in the Augury Simulations OSW kit. First we'll take a look at the cable bundle, I'm calling this, because there's a lot of cables here. First we'll have the typical familiar 90-degree angle plugs here we have for our midge motors that you see in the background there. And one of these with the big holes in it, or the large pins, that is for the power. And then we have this one over here for the data. And of course they just secure onto the motors with these threaded rings here, lock rings. Very neat. I do like these, the way these connect. Anything that screws on when you connect it is going to be a better plug than something we just plug into, which is kind of what these are. And of course this is dictated by the Ioni board that the SimuCube is running. And we have a big cable here that's got, let's put that one aside, let's see if I can drag us over here. And this plugs in obviously to our controller box over here. We'll see that in a minute. But they've actually added, instead of the normal cables that we have here, we actually added a ground cable here to this. So, and it's a very long ground cable, and it's got two pieces at the end here. There's actually a little connector there. So you could actually, if you don't want these two pieces, you could just unplug it and maybe just connect this to an existing plug you have already mounted to a known good ground. Or you could just run both of these to different grounds, like one to the back of your PC, one to your rig, something like that. Fortunately, I have never had a problem with my ground on the equipment that I've been running, knock wood. So, yeah, it's nice, though, that they went to the length here, to the extra step to provide you with a good known ground that should cure any problems you have with EMI interference when you're running your OSW wheels. Very nice little addition, actually. And of course we have the dead man switch, and yeah, that will, well, actually not a dead man switch, this is a locking switch, and that's going to be your kill switch, obviously, to keep the motor from going crazy on you if it does. Right, very nice bundled setup here. This connector here has some additional security screws on it, like we see in a lot of these 25-pin DIN type plugs. And you know, sometimes these are really hard to get in, and sometimes they're easy to get in, or you can get one side in and the other side doesn't go in. So it's always been kind of a hit and miss with me when it comes to installing these. But anyway, 3 meters long, a lot of cable here. So yeah, you can mount your controller box just about anywhere in the world, I think, in your sim racing area, and have no problem with these cables reaching between it and your motor. Right, let's go ahead and slide this out. We also get a nice USB cable, and again, going the extra mile here with a cable that has the ferrite cores wrapped around the wire, which is also help filtering any EMI interference. That's really great to see manufacturers are starting to do that, or do that, or don't do. When they don't do that, it's kind of like, I think, well, you know, they're really not that more expensive, because I've priced these out, especially when you buy in bulk, to include one that has the ferrite cores. And it's you know, like I said, cheap insurance to try to keep the EMI out of the equation. We have enough to worry about when we're running our direct drive wheels and get them tuned exactly the way we want to, without having some known bugs to chase around. And EMI is some of the hardest things to locate ever. Right. What else we got? Well, I got this. Well, first let me show you these. These are the cables that came with it, which are European cables. And it's not that big of a deal. I don't really need a USA cable, because it's got the standard connector here that goes over to our power supply in the controller box here. And I've got, and I'm sure you guys, if you don't, it's a cheap little cable to buy. I think the US should be getting the right cable. I think I just didn't get one. And anyway, I've got a ton of these laying around, so it was no big deal for me to just go grab one and use it. And that goes on the back of the box. I got the, sorry for the bump there on the mic. I got the 18 Newton meter Augury wheel solution. Now this is something I haven't used before. I've used the 20, I've used the 30, and this 18 obviously is a smaller package. And it costs less. It comes in at around 900 some euros. And it's kind of different because it's most of the midge motors that I've used before, the holding torque is usually half what the peak torque is. And that's true with the small midge, which is 10 holding and a 20 peak. The large midge is a 15 holding with a 30 peak. But this one actually is a 6 holding Newton meter with a 18 Newton meter peak. And I'll give you a little look at it here so you guys can freeze that if you want and get the numbers off that motor. You can see where it says 6 Newton meters there. But you look at the spec sheets on the midge motors, and indeed it is a peak of 18 Newton meter. It also is a fast motor. Well, not super fast, but it's faster than the small or the large midge motor at 2,500 RPMs. It is also a smaller package. The stators in here are smaller. As you can see, it's shorter. I have a, actually, let me go ahead and do this real quick. I have a 20, and you can see, there it is. And I'll bump that next to, see how this lines up. You guys can get a general idea here what the differences are. All right, so you can see the 20 is actually sticking out considerably longer amount because the stator in it is longer and it's heavier, and it's using obviously some heavier magnets because it all kind of goes together with the stator construction on these servo motors. And even, I'll even pull out the 30 so you guys can get a general idea on that one. Get my cable out of the way here without dumping it off the table. And let's grab the big guy. And this is the 30. Take a look at that. And you guys can freeze that and take a look at those numbers. And we'll put it next to you. This is the big granddaddy. And it's the heaviest one obviously too, because it has an even longer stator in it. And there's the differences. I'm not sure how well that's showing up, but you can see this one sticking out further as you go along. So if you have a 20, this gives you an idea of what the difference is as far as the depth of the motor. And it actually reminds me of the 52 Kollmorgen. It's about the same dimensions, I think. Right. So we've got the 3 motors, and of course we choose the motors based on what we want out of the motor. Each one of these 3 motors is going to feel different. Before we even start adjusting anything in the software or the configurators, they all feel different because they're different motors construction. They have higher weights to the stators, and the magnets are going to be stronger in the bigger motors, and that gives us a different type of inertia and dampening feeling natively that is actually, let me rephrase that, that is native to a piece of hardware, this motor. So this one's actually going to feel lighter, it's going to feel quicker, and actually at 2,500 RPMs it's going to feel quicker, it's going to feel a little bit lighter, and we'll have to dial in dampening and inertia, if that's your thing. Of course, it's all subjective. And dial it in to try to match what the bigger ones do naturally just out of the box because of the differences in their manufacturing and the weights. Anyway, this is the first time I tried the 18 Newton meter, and you'll see me driving this, and it's a very quick motor. It delivers the force feedback. It's pretty snappy the way I had it tuned, and I actually enjoyed it. But I will say this about the smaller motors, and this includes a wheel like the AccuForce. The smaller motors are quicker, have a snappier feel to them, but it doesn't seem quite as natural to me personally as the larger motors do, because they have that natural dampening and inertia when things get moving, and the bigger ones, you know, it takes more to stop them, and it just translates differently. Motors feel different, I guess is what I'm trying to say here, and there's really no right or wrong as far as which motor you use. And I actually enjoyed using this motor, but I still prefer the larger motors in comparison, because I guess maybe it's because I'm used to it. If this is the only motor I had, I would have no problem with it. I'm sure like I said, I had a blast using it. And again, you'll see some driving footage later on, and I'll discuss that. Right, what else about this? It has the keyway in it, and typically I'll take this key out when I get a midge motor because I'm using the traditional clamping system, which is what you find in a lot of the kits that you get from manufacturers, and that's this little 2-piece guy here that I think I may have crushed it. Oh, there we go. I still got the screw in it. I was playing with it. And this is you can see that it has kind of a conical shape there, like a cone. It gets narrower towards the end there. And it has a matching shape inside of this collar. And of course, when we put these together and we use that screw you just saw me take out, or use 4 of them actually, you can see there's 4 holes in the back here that are threaded. Tap with some threads. And as we screw this down and these pinch together, or pinch down together, then it tightens up this inner cone onto the shaft and locks down and doesn't move. So that's typical of what you'll get when you get your midge motor kit. And you'll pull the key off, which is just a press. You put a little, I think it's a 2.5 millimeter screw in here, and just kind of pushes and presses out, similar to while this presses out. You'll see there's 2 holes here, one here and one here, and we'll put a screw in each one of those on each side when we're trying to take this off of the shaft when it's already mounted, because you can't just pull it off. And we'll tighten each one of these, rotate back and forth until it actually separates, because once it tightens down, you can see the screw going in there. See how it goes up against this piece on the flat, and then as we screw down harder, it breaks it loose. Right, so that's how you take them out. And go ahead and take the screw out. So we don't take the key out of this one though, because Augury has a cool thing on their kit. And I just want to show you this. You can see the marks there from that screws where I've actually used this a few times and pulled them off some motors. Right, they include this from Sim Racing Coach. Very ingenious, actually, I think. I can't see much room for improvement here, but I will mention one in a minute. This is a combination hub for your shaft of your motor and adapter for your wheel. And it's a quick release to boot. So it's very neat. It's left a space here. You can see that obviously if we clench down on it, we're going to need some space for this to actually tighten down around the motor shaft. And as we push this down, that's what happens. They've left some extra room in here, right in there, to accommodate the key that's in the keyway on this motor shaft. So it's a simple matter of taking it and sliding it on like this, and then we push down with the quick release. So you guys can see that. I'm just pushing down the quick release here, cinching it down, and you can see actually it's a little too loose. So what I would do is, there's an adjustment on the back here. And that's a little cap socket screw. It's a 5 mil, and it's just like a bicycle quick release. I'm sure you guys have experience with that stuff. Let me grab one of my hex sockets here. And what you do is just, if you look at this, it says, let me get around so you can see it. It says 5 Newton meters there. All right. So that's all the force you should need to use to clamp this to the wheel. But we can adjust it by tightening this. I'm just going to turn it like a half a turn. And then I'll try to put it back on here. And you can tell usually, just like when you're doing an axle on a bicycle, if you've got the tightness close to where it needs to be, and that feels like it's getting close. And then I'll just go ahead and finish pushing it down. And yeah. Yeah, that's not coming off. So, and of course, really when a hub is attached to a shaft, a motor shaft like this, most of the force in our driving is going to be in a radial type way. This is where we're going to be torquing the wheel because we're steering it against the motor itself. And we're not giving a lot of pull on it. Now we might put a little bit of push on it because when I steer a steering wheel, I'm actually using a pushing pressure with my arm, the turning arm, which allows you to use more of your muscles in your body, which makes you last longer when you're driving these motors. All right, so yeah, very ingenious actually. So now we have a combination of an adapter for the motor shaft into a hub adapter for your steering wheel. You can actually mount your wheel directly to this on a 70 millimeter spacing here. So these are tapped holes in there with some 5 mil threads. And yeah, that's a 70 millimeter pattern. And typically what I do, and this is what I do, not typically, but this is what I do, is I use the Q1R. I've been using this for years. Great quick release. I don't really have any issues with it except for from wheel to wheel or adapter to adapter, it can be looser or tighter, and you do have to make a little adjustment to the nut here, but really I'm splitting hairs here. I'm trying to find something to complain about if I'm too lazy to, tighten that a quarter of a turn or something to make it tight again. But anyway, once you buy this set, and you can buy it set, or you can just buy this side or buy this side, which is the wheel side, or the hub side, traditionally the hub side. We don't need this anymore because we've got this, right? unless I want to run it, and I do actually, I can actually take this and attach it to this, right? And then because all my wheels already have this adapter on it, so that's what I did. So I can just go ahead and attach all my wheels to it. But the cool thing about this is a 49 euro product at Augury. You can get it for 49 euro plus shipping and whatever. I'm not sure if that's with VAT or without. It doesn't really say. But anyway, 49 euro for not only a hub to adapt to your shaft here, but also an adapter for your steering wheel. And once you could actually mount your wheel directly to this and then just use this as your quick release and have several wheels with one of these on every wheel at 49 euros a piece. And the reason I'm saying that is because these, the cheapest I could find one of these is 59 euros, excluding VAT. So yeah, that's, you know, you get two things in one here, and this is just a wheel side adapter for the Q1R. And yeah, so you could just buy yourself several of these for your wheels and use those. The only complaint I have, and it's not really a complaint, it's just something I would like to see done differently, is this is a 70mm pattern here. So you can only attach a 70mm wheel to it. There are wheels out there from manufacturers, some custom stuff that has the 50.8, or what a lot of people like to call the F1 wheel size pattern, which is a 50.8mm spacing. And it looks like, actually I got one of those right here. Sim Racing Machines USB adapter has it on it. And you can see here I have 70mm spacing on the outer side of this adapter. And on the inside, it's actually 50.8. Right. So they could do the same thing to this. Just go ahead and drill 6 more holes and make it a 50.8mm pattern, and boom, there you go. Done. Now you can mount any wheel you want to this, and yeah, for 49 euro, yeah, I think that would be the way to go, if, of course, you're using OSW wheels. If you're using something else like a Cole Morgan that doesn't even have a keyway in it, although you can get Cole Morgans with keyways in them. The one from Sim Steering 2 or from the Leo Bodner setup doesn't have it. They just order their motors without the keyway in it. Right. So you have to use their adapter, which is one that is similar to the one I just showed you, but a little bit different because the shafts on the Cole Morgan are a little bit bigger in diameter, larger in diameter than the midges are. And it's the same type of thing. You can see the conical kind of shape there to this, and the same thing is happening there. And you put these together, bolt them together, and voila, it tightens down on the shaft. Right. So that is very cool. I know that's a long explanation showing you this quick release adapter, okay? But it's pretty ingenious, and I wanted to go to the links to show you the options and what I was doing, and yeah, any suggestions I would have. So I think Sim Racing Coach has a winner on their hands with this, and could even make it one better by adding a 50.8mm pattern inside of this. Seems how there's no pass-through here anyway for the shaft. It bottoms out, so yeah, I would think that there would be enough metal there in the internal part, whereas a 50.8 pattern could be done. And then you could have just one of these. They could just make this one with those extra holes and not have to make another one. Or if they wanted to, loosen this up, they could make an adapter plate that would go on this and have a 50.8 on that too. But I would like to see it integrated into the one-piece unit. Make things simpler, and yeah, a few of these on your wheels and you're good to go. Like I said, it's very cool the way you can clamp this down. Now, only thing is, if you've got a reach problem or a reach issue and you got to put spacers in, then that kind of, you know, takes away from that, because now if I put one of my aluminum spacers on here, then I have to go back to another way to mount my wheel again, which would be, of course, this on there. So anyway, I think it's a pretty good solution. It's well thought out, well executed, nice aluminum, nice finish on this thing. I'll give you a closer look of it there. Really professionally done. Sim Racing Coach does real good work. I really like their end product. Very nice. Right. Okay. Enough time on that. And the midge motor. What else are we going to talk about? You also get a holder or a bracket to mount your motor with. I don't use these because I have a P1 cockpit and I like that front mount system it has on it. It's very stiff, and it's a 15mm piece of aluminum. You'll see that in a minute when I actually show you how I mounted mine. But the cool thing is they got different ones. They got one like this that will fit your 20 Newton meter motor. And they also have the special one here that they cut out a piece here for this 18 Nm. I'll show you what that does. Let's just go ahead and slide this on here. Turn this sideways. And I'm going to slide this on here this way. See, the actual power plug, I think that's a power plug. Yes. Power plug that sits on the motor here, and because it's a shorter motor, they actually adapt their brackets to handle that. So it's kind of, pick this up a little bit. There we go. So you can see how they've actually adapted that to fit around there. Very cool. So they've got their own plate, so when you order this kit, then you get this plate with it to do your mounting. And speaking of these plates themselves, again, very nicely done. All this stuff, including the case over here, we'll see in a minute. Stainless steel, very nicely done. You know, it's been water jet cut, it looks like. Might be laser cut, I'm not sure. But either case, very nicely done piece. Something that you will like to have mounted to your rig, I think. And we've got the side plates here that are also done in the stainless steel. Very nice stuff here. This is really, it's, you know, for the kit, 900 euros with this motor, and it's, I think, I don't want to quote myself here, but it's like 1100, I think, or just over, or maybe it's 1099 for the 20 or the small midge, and then it goes up to like a 1133 or something like that for the 30 Newton meter or large midge. But yeah, this is what is setting this kit apart from other kits that I've reviewed, is they've gone the extra steps here to actually use this nice stainless steel plate. They're, you know, they're actually putting some style into it instead of just the regular old black powder coated steel or whatever, even if it's aluminum and it's just a standard kind of looking thing. There's nothing special going on here, but they're actually putting things in here, the slots in these housings or these pieces of metal here, to just give it a nice characteristic different from what else I've seen so far. Now there's other cool stuff, cool mounts for midge motors I've seen out there, but this one is actually the first one I've had in my hands that had some kind of design on it. I really like it. They've gone the extra mile here and done that. Of course, this is the one for the larger midges, which doesn't have the cutout. These remain the same size. They don't change. We also get some nice hardware bits, all stainless steel with the kit for mounting our wheels. Very cool. And we also have some hardware in here for mounting our controller box. Speaking of which, I think that's the last thing we're going to look at here real quick. And there it is. I have to say, this thing is beautiful. And it is, I do get some fingerprints on it from time to time because from moving it around or whatever. But it's a beautiful piece here. I mean, this is all stainless steel metal. And I've got my hands greasy handling all these parts, so it's going to smudge up my cover. I'm trying to wipe off as much as I can before I handle it. But just look at this. It's gorgeous. And you can see the machining is very nice on this. The edges fit perfectly. I mean, a lot of care goes into this type of thing, and it just shows right away as soon as you look at these things. And you can see how the patterns cut into the sides here. It's just very cool. It's even got the SimuCube logo in there, and it's got these long slots at the top, and we'll talk about those in a second. And just all the way around, they've cut out their logo in the front panel here. I mean, it's just gorgeous. And when you press the power button, it lights up, and there's lights inside. It's just a very, and of course the logo lights up too with LEDs. It's just a very, very cool box. Now, my coolest box so far I had was one from Sim Racing Bay. It was a plexiglass one, but this definitely exceeds that. It's no doubt. I mean, anybody can see that as soon as you pick it up. All these stainless steel pieces that were cut, and we've nice bends in the stainless steel here too. It's not butted together there. It's actually got a radius on it. So very cool the way they did this. And of course, we had the normal plug assemblies here we see on all of the Ioni Pro HC boards. We've got our main supply down there, and we've got a couple of USBs and some RJ45s up here, whoops, over here. And that's for like USB wheels there that need a USB conversion. We can plug it directly into this, like that we actually got from Penguin RC before I did a review a long time ago. Not that long, but a while back, on their button plate that actually doesn't have a USB conversion panel in it. It uses this Ioni board for that. Very cool. And yeah, everywhere you look, it's just screaming quality. I mean, this is a beautiful box. This is something you can mount to your rig and have it where you can see it and like to see it. I just, you know, going the extra mile here, they've actually distinguished themselves, Augury has, by doing this kind of thing. I mean, normally you just see a box, a computer box converted, which is fine. I mean, all that stuff is fine. It's not going to improve the performance of your system. But yeah, I love the way this looks. And I don't know if it does, the lights do it justice here, but it is just a sweet, sweet little controller box here. And what we're going to do next, I think we've done everything else that I wanted to show you as far as a closer look. We'll go ahead and pop this open and take a look at the electronics package and how it was assembled inside. I know there's a Meanwell power supply in here, and we'll take a look at that. And yeah, so the next segment will be a look inside. Now for our inside look segment. First off, I wanted to show you guys, once I had one of these plates off, a little close-up of what it looks like. And it's a very reflective surface. It's actually, the white you see reflected is from the walls behind the camera, actually. So it's very reflective surface, obviously being stainless steel. And you can see the brushed texture there, I think, right there. Very nicely done. Again, as I said before, in a closer look, I like the pattern. They've gone the extra mile here to actually put a pattern in the side here, which actually adds to the cooling of the case, obviously. And even put the SimuCube logo in there. Again, just above and beyond the Call of Duty here, I think. But when you want to make something look special and kind of stand out from the rest of the crowd of cases that are housing OSW projects, yeah, this definitely does it. They have raised the bar over at Augury with this case, no doubt. Right, and this is the little top plate that came off the top. And you can see it has also, just like the other parts, has the counterboard holes so that we can run those flathead screws in there, and everything is nice and flush across the case, as you can see here. Right, but even though it's a fantastic case, if the internals aren't good, not much of a point in doing that, is there? Well, fortunately, Augury has also done well there. All top-of-the-line parts, and we start off with this Meanwell SDR 48048. That's 480 watts at 48 volts DC. Now, the output is down here on the bottom. I'll get a little closer look there. And you can see it is actually 48 volts at 10 amps. Now, the cool thing about this particular Meanwell power supply, this SDR line of power supplies they have, is it can actually peak from its mean of 480 watts to 720 watts for a maximum of 3 seconds on the duration of the time. So that allows us to run the larger motors that have larger power requirements on their spikes or their peaks, like the large Midge. It's a 30 Newton meter motor, and because this can actually hold 720 watts for 3 seconds, it's perfect for that type of application also. So we can run the 30, we can run the 20, and of course we can run this 18 Newton meter Midge over here. I'm not going to call them small and large anymore, because now we're getting more motors from Midge introduced into the OSW project builds, and yeah, it's might as well just call them from their Newton meters like we do for other motors, because small and large, and we'd have to call this the extra small or something, I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, very nice power supply, and yeah, those 30 Newton meter motors, they're going to, remember the 30 Newton meters is the peak torque that the motor's putting out, and that doesn't happen very often, except when collisions and big huge crashes or big bumps or that kind of thing is when we're going to get the full peak power of the motor. So yeah, a 3 second duration at 720 watts is more than ample time to handle all of that. Right, so let's look at the rest of what's going on here. And of course, this is a SimuCube based kit, and you can see the main board, the first thing we see. Oh, and also we see these holes over here in this Meanwell power supply. Again, a testament to the efficiency and the quality of the components used in these Meanwell power supplies. There's no fan, so they have to be very efficient to avoid having to have a fan blowing on them all the time, or when they're under peak loads. Right, but there is a fan in the case, which is normally what you will find in most of the OSW builds I find for controller boxes. And this is actually just a small 50 millimeter fan. I couldn't even hear the thing running when I had this on. And you see the label is pointing this way towards the, you see those big ceramic 10 watt resistors there. And typically on a fan, computer fan, that tag, or that where you see the label, is where the flow is going to. So it should be sucking it in from this side and putting out over there. So it's blowing over these big power resistors, and there's 2 of them on there. You can see the stack there's 2. So of course that's in the power circuit, and when you have like a 30 Newton meter midge on there at full force, then obviously these things are going to get warm. It's also blowing on the Ioni high current board. So this is a Pro HC board from Ioni, which is the 25 amp board, and that's the board you want, because then you can run all kinds of different motors with one application of a box, which is, you know, if you start out with the, like say the 8 Newton meter, which is a fine motor, had a lot of fun using that, then you can also grow or try different motors, if you will, if you run across motors that somebody can lend you, or you buy some used ones, that kind of thing, and see what you like in motors. Right, so I like that ability to expand. And yeah, I think all the boxes should have this in them when you buy them. Right. The cabling in here is very tidy. Again, Augury has done a very professional job here with this case and the wiring, the cable management, you can see the power button down here, right there, where they've soldered or crimped down, and they've using shrink wrap everywhere to keep anything from making contact and having problems. And again, we have the mains connectors over here again with the heat shrink on it. Very nicely done. And we'll just flip it over so you can see that it's also the power coming from the power supply to the main board, also done in the same manner. Right. It's a universal theme here within this box. It's all very well done. I like what I'm seeing. I can tell that the guys at Augury care about what they're doing, and they're not going to settle for second best. They like to do things the right way, the professional way, the first time, even though it may take more time to do it that way. Right. So, not much else to show here, really, on the internals of this box. It's, again, any SimuCube with a Ioni Pro HC is going to kind of look the same, but what sets this apart, obviously, is the materials used in the construction of the box, and, of course, it has a very nice professional job done as far as the assembly internally. And, of course, we've also got, I meant to show you this, and this SimuCube board, I don't know if the older ones had this facility or not, but this one right here is actually zip tied. They've actually zip tied the Ioni board to its slot. So you can see a little zip tie down on the bottom there. And this, obviously, for motion rigs and rigs with transducers and things like that, can cause a lot of vibrations and movement. And this just is an insurance policy, if you will, to keep the Ioni board from working itself loose from the slot. Again, attention to detail is what this screams on this unit here from Augury. Just in general, you know, everywhere you look, it's the same thing. Okay, so what we'll do next is we'll get into actually mounting this stuff up. You can actually mount this box, and I'm going to do a quick little mounting segment on that, and how we're going to mount our midge motor to the P1 rig, which is the normal 15mm plate, front mount plate that I'm using. I'm not going to be using these very nice stainless steel units that you saw in closer look if you saw that segment. Again, everywhere you look, man, Augury is just doing a great job here. Right. So when we get back, we'll take a look at the mounting options. So let's talk a little bit about the mounting options for the equipment that you get with your kit. First off, as we saw in the closer look, and may have discussed it in the inside look, this box can be mounted to profile, aluminum profile, which is the easiest way to do it, or even if you have a wood rig, you know, you can use that, or a steel rig, some kind of a steel or aluminum plate you want to mount it to. It really doesn't matter as long as you get the holes right for these slots that are in the side of the case. Now, these slots have the round hole, like a keyhole design, as they like to call it, to where you can actually take the head part of the screw, and these are this comes with your kit, by the way. These are the 5mm socket head cap screws, and the head of that obviously is going to fit in the round part of these holes. So you got one here, and you got another one over here, counter directions, and we'll just put that in there like that, and we'll slide it around. Then it's captured once it's slid down into the groove. Once we come, but you don't want to get it too far, it'll pop back out on you. But yeah, now it's captured in the groove. Now, of course, on the other side of this case, there is a corresponding groove or slot, and we can take our, as long as it's long enough, you can take your wrench and go ahead and put it through that slot. And once we get it on the screw, then we can actually tighten it down from the other side, tighten it up against whatever surface you're tightening against. Now, I'm actually going to show, take this back out, a little bit of video of them doing that in a second, but I just wanted to show you the parts first. And we'll start off with these. These nuts are also included in your kit, and they have this piece of metal. It looks like it's kind of welded on there, maybe. But yeah, it's a little piece of springy metal, and that will operate just like a spring ball T-nut for a profile. And here's a shot of them actually putting this into some profile, and you can see it's just a matter of compressing that piece of metal, getting it twisted in, and then positioning it where you want to. And obviously we're going to need 2 nuts for the application. Right. So once that is done, we're going to actually screw these 5mm screws into them, these cap screws. So here you see the video, they're actually screwing these in preparation for mounting the box itself. Right, so now we have everything set up, but we want to make sure you get the spacing right for the slots in this case. And you can see here that's what they're doing, and then once they have that right, they're just going to go ahead and kind of tilt it up in a different way. In other words, the front goes up to just locate those screw heads and get the box planted on there. And then once that's done, of course, it's easy to raise and lower the box and push it forward and backwards up to the limitations of the hole in it. So you want to want it popping back out. And then, of course, we'll tighten everything up with that wrench. And yeah, you can see them tightening here. And once that's tightened up, we're good to go. So very simple to install this, really. But I won't be doing that because I have too much stuff on my uprights or where I would be installing it on my rig anyway. So I'm just not going to use that. But yeah, no big deal. I just sit on the cart that I use for all my electronics to run my rig. Right. So easy enough to mount that, and it's nice. Again, they didn't have to put that in this case, but they did. And, you know, again, they're really thinking out of the box a little bit, literally, as far as what they can add to their boxes and controller boxes, rather. And also, before we get away from the box, they also have another box, and I'm going to show you a picture of it here. It's more, if you just want a different design on the box, then you can have a flat box that has, you can see the flanges on the sides of it, or you can mount it to something, you know, flat that way. If that's the preferred box that you want, you can get that one. So it's good to have options. Again, they didn't have to do that, but it's nice that Augury is really, like I said, paying attention to what's going on and want to be a premier player in the sim hardware field, which I think they are, actually. Now, let's talk about mounting the motor. And we are not going to use these great looking stainless steel motor mounts, because I used the great SimLab P1 rig, the 8020 profile rig, and it has a better way to mount a servo motor as far as I'm concerned, and that is that 15mm thick mounting plate that goes across the uprights. And this is the plate here. You've probably seen this in other videos maybe where I showed you me mounting a motor, but this is what I'm going to use to mount it to, and it's very simple to mount to this. The only consideration being, because these are servo motors, where I'm going to locate these connector ports. And typically I'll tilt it over sideways so they're on one side or the other, so it doesn't interfere with anything on the top, like my monitor mount sliding down. I like to get as low as possible, so to the motor itself and the rig. And yeah, so we just turn it sideways like that, and that keeps everything out of the way. And it's just a simple matter of, once I decide what that is going to be as far as the orientation, is take this and just make sure there's nothing in the way there and set it on top. And we're going to use some of these 40mm M8 1.25 thread pitch bolts, and there's a cap head bolts, a couple of washers. I'm also going to use these nylon inserted safety anti-vibration nuts to keep them from coming loose. And it's a simple matter. I've got 2 washers on here also. Take one off and just slide it through the hole, and we'll use a washer and a nut on the bottom. And I kind of just hold the nut up there usually and start it with the bolt, because it's easier trying to turn the nut in the strict confines of the corner of this motor casing here. Right, so 4 of those in, tighten everything down, and it's off to use these little bolts here. They're actually going to mount in the uprights. So yeah, that'll be it. So what we'll do next is, when we come back, we'll take a look at the final setup, and this will be mounted to the rig. Obviously, we'll just do a quick fly over that and take a look at, maybe we'll even take a look at how the case looks when we power it up, because it's got that cool lighting thing going on in front of it. So we'll get to that next. So now we have the 18 Newton meter wheel mounted, and you can see it's rather short, as we saw before when we were looking at the comparisons between the motors. And I'll go in and get a closer look at it. Is indeed the 6025. Right. And Again, not using the nice stainless steel brackets that come with these kits because I prefer to mount or front mount my servo motors to the P1 rig. And we're using a Cube Formula 1 wheel here because we're going to be driving the Renault 3.5, the newer car in iRacing. And I just have a zip tie there holding the cord because it has a regular USB interface. You can see there I'm running an extension on it, and it's not using the interface that I usually use, my Lumberg connector over there. And this will do for the review purposes, obviously. So yeah, everything's bolted up tight. We're ready to go. So we're going to get in and drive the Renault Formula 3.5 car in iRacing, and we'll get to that next. So before we actually get in and drive, I want to actually give you guys a quick look at what this case looks like just sitting on my little cart here that I have all my electronics for sim racing. You can see the logo Augury is lit up and the power button lights up. And of course we're going to see some lights permeating from the actual case itself. So I just thought I'd give you a quick look at that just so you can see what it looks like when it lights up. Again, attention to detail. It's all in the details, guys. So we'll get to actually driving now. So here we are in iRacing, and we're at Sebring in the treacherous turn 17. And yeah, we're in the Renault Formula 3.5, a newer car in iRacing. I thought I'd give that a spin, see what it was all about. So let's talk about the specs of the motor here, and that's really what this part of the review is about, the motor itself. It's a 2500 RPM motor with a 6 Newton meter holding torque, but a burst or peak of 18 Newton meters. Now traditionally, you would think that a 6 Newton meter motor would be a 12 Newton meter peak, but probably because of the RPM, the speed of this motor, and maybe the way the windings are done, they're able to put enough current in there to get it up to 18 Newton meters. Regardless of that, it's typically a motor I think that most would think, yeah, this probably wouldn't be a very suitable motor to run as a direct drive force feedback wheel. It's too fast, and not only that, but it's very light compared to the 20 or the 30 Newton meter midgets. And if you saw the closer look segment, you could see I had them all stacked next to each other. You can see the length differences in the sizes of the motors. And of course, length means if it's short like this one is, the stator's going to be short as compared to a 20 Newton meter or 30 Newton meters, and the rotor that's inside that stator, which is really the shaft we attach our wheel to, is also going to be shorter, which means lighter, which allows it to be as quick as it is at 2500 RPMs. But first thing I thought was it's going to be a twitchy motor. It's going to be just too twitchy to really communicate correctly what's going on with the car. But I came to find out that that's not true. And you can see from my driving here, I'm catching little slides when the car's breaking loose. I'm able to correct for it. And it is a busy wheel though. It is jumping around a bit. And I could actually, and yeah, there's a good example there. Turn 1, the rear end was breaking loose, and typically in turn 1, with the speed you're carrying in there, in the bumps, if your rear end break loose, typically I'll come around on that. But it looks like it's, you know, it seemed like I was able to react a little quicker to it. I don't know if that's true or not, or if it's just because it's a new motor and I was, you know, trying to sense things a little bit more acutely than I normally would with my regular motor. Anyway, and you can see there's a slide. And yeah, again, the motor's able to communicate to me enough to keep me from coming around and sliding all the way around into the cones. Of course, there might have been a little luck involved there too. So anyway, back to the motor. It is twitchy. You know, that's the only complaint I have really here. Not the speed, it feels a little bit twitchy, and you can of course get rid of that by putting some dampening in. But then we're initiating software dampening and maybe some inertia if you want to slow it down a little bit. And again, that's software initiated. And anytime, at least to me, that you're doing it with software, it doesn't feel quite as natural analog as if the wheels or the motor's characteristics present the dampening and inertia by itself before we even fire it up. And that's why I've kind of gravitated to the larger motors, the 30 Newton meter midge and the 54G Kollmorgen, because they are larger motors, they're heavier motors, the stators are heavier, the rotors are heavier, and they have a more natural to me feeling as far as when it comes to dampening and inertia when I'm using it. It's not so much about the power of those motors, even though it's nice to have that in reserve. It gives you what I feel like is a little bit more overhead, and it allows you to turn the torque down lower and still be able to experience all of the force feedback cues you're getting. But yeah, it's just the dampening and inertia feels much more natural to me personally. And of course, as soon as I say personally, that means everything I'm saying is completely subjective. Somebody obviously would probably say, oh no, that's not right, I feel this. But that's cool. And when it comes to this motor, that's really the only thing I complain about. And if I put the dampening in, that's going to numb it out a little bit. That's what dampening does. And I wouldn't have that quick reaction that I feel like I need with this car. As you can see, as I'm fighting my way through 17, really pushing hard, that I was able to adjust for those little bit of slides, a little bit of pop, jumping up in the air and sliding I was getting. So yeah, overall I was actually very surprised with the delivery of force feedback cues by this motor. Pleasantly so. And I think that it's plenty of torque. 18 Newton meters burst or peak is plenty for most any sim racer out there. The only reason you want a bigger motor is because to me, would be for the dampening characteristics and the inertia characteristics. But having a motor like this allows Augury Simulations to keep the price point relatively low for what you get here at 919 euros or $1,045 for a complete OSW kit that really, if you, not even counting the motor here, if you look at the rest of the kit with the quick release you get and the stainless steel bits, the beautiful case, you know, the professional wiring job, everything is just done top notch here, all top flight kit. And considering what you're getting here, I think it's quite a bargain. And yeah, I don't see how anybody could be unhappy with this system. And if you have any doubt about an 18 Newton meter wheel anyway, then you could always just get order their kit with one of the 20 Newton meter or 30 Newton meter motors and be done with it. But yeah, that's all subjective, and everybody will think differently on that. But yeah, I don't see, yeah, like I said, Augury Simulations has done a superb job here. Everything is really professionally done, and yeah, this is the kind of kit that I would like to have on my rig. So anyway, we'll get to the final thoughts next. Final thoughts on the Augury Simulations Direct Drive OSW wheel system. It's always good to see new SimuCube Ioni-based direct drive force feedback systems coming to market. Competition is a good thing for us sim racers, as it tends to keep the prices of these systems edging ever lower, which of course will make them more accessible to a larger segment of our community. But it also means that companies who want to grab a share of this market need to make their products stand out from the others. I think that the guys at Augury Simulation recognized this and decided to produce a SimuCube Ioni wheel system with custom parts and use materials that no one else is using. And I have to say they've come up with a great result. The stainless steel that is used in the construction of their controller boxes and their motor mounts certainly brings a rather unique look to their systems that I haven't seen before myself, and I think that most would agree that these parts look very good indeed. And it's not just the material used, of course. It's also the custom designing they have implemented on their cases and on their mounts. From the artistic cooling vents to the clever mounting slots, you can tell that a lot of thought went into their product. But thankfully, this beauty is not only skin deep. From the look inside segment of this review, you can see that only quality parts are used, with a build quality that is, well, frankly, among the best I've seen to date. The kit I got is the one with the 18 Newton meter midge servo motor, but I also got a 30 Newton meter midge to try, as I have not had the opportunity to do that up until now. The 18 Newton meter motor, I think, has all the power that most any sim racer will ever require. As you can see from the driving segment of the review, I had my hands full when driving the Renault Formula 3.5 car in iRacing. I really had fun using this motor, and the fact that it's, well, less expensive than, say, a 20 Newton meter or a 30 Newton meter motor allows them to keep the price of this kit in the 900 euro or $1,000 range. Considering the quality of the materials and construction of this kit, I think this one deserves a long, hard look if you are considering a new direct drive wheel system. I'm Barry Rowland. Thanks for watching the Sim Racing Garage channel. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And if you would like to support what we do here at the SRG, visit our website at simracinggarage.com.